Good afternoon, everyone. I call to order the special board meeting 6/25/21 at 3 p.m. Thank you for being here for this special meeting, and I will do roll call. Mr. Mark Anderson is not present with us today. Mr. Harry Block,
Here.
Mr. Bruce Mandrick,
Here.
Mr. Jack Turner,
Present.
and Lily Campbell present. We have four members that are present today. So we're ready to start with the business of the day. We have two items that we will move into. And the first item, unless the superintendent has something that she wishes to say.
We should start with Mr. Sample confirming whether or not we have public comment.
Yes, Madam President, there are no members of the public with public comment today.
And I wanted to create a 5-page superintendent's update, but since I already gave you all that last night,
Thank you.
I assumed you wouldn't believe me if I said we had done all that since last night. So no, there is not a superintendent's update.
Thank you so much. So with that, we shall move right into item 7, which is business. And it is the 2021-22 adopted budget. And so
I definitely want to take a minute, like I have often done, to say these have been difficult times. It has been a most difficult year to 18 months. And much of that has fallen in the corner of the business services department in terms of just how to do our business well under the constraints of COVID. And moving through the uncertainty of first believing we didn't have any funds to do everything that was necessary, and then moving to the extreme of having so many funds that all have to be spent in specific ways has put quite a burden on the business services department, and particularly on Aaron Thornsberry. And I just really want to affirm him that he's kept his cool, he's kept his head about him, he's done what was necessary each day and beyond each day into the evening and the weekends, and definitely want to affirm him for that. And we are incredibly lucky to have him as our CBO.
thank you. And so with that, I acquiesce to everything that she said, and we will talk more about that. Thank you for being here with us. And now it is you.
Thank you for the kind words. Good afternoon, board members and superintendent. So I will be, let's see, I have a presentation for you here. If I can just figure out how to get that up on the screen, I will share that. Here we go. Okay. Our 21-22 adopted budget. And just, quick intro. It's our budget's based on the assumptions of the governors may revise, and we're going to keep monitoring the state budget adoption, what happens afterwards, what they agree on, and what gets signed into law. And we will obviously update our budget based on those new assumptions as they come out. The budget is due to the chartering authorities and County Office of Education on June 30. So just a few highlights on what we are including in our adopted budget based on the May revise. We have a 5.07% COLA. It's touted as the mega COLA for the LCFF. It compounds really 2 years of cost of a living adjustment. There's a 2.31% unfunded current year COLA. And then next year, a COLA of 1.7% plus another augmentation of 1%. When you compound all of that together, it's 5.07%. All of our other state revenues that received outside the LCFF, most of those, we have a 1.7% COLA that we are assuming. And so this is kind of a unique year where they actually have a different COLA for LCFF versus all the other categoricals. And in a minute, I'll show you there's even a different one for special ed. So we'll see if that all changes as the budget's adopted. Lottery funding, we're keeping that at $199 per ADA based on the P annual. That stays the same as current year. And the next year for the budget, the state is proposing to eliminate all deferrals except the June to July deferral. For some reason, they are leaving that one on the table. But we're hopeful to see that one get eliminated as well. So special education, we have a 4.05% COLA that was announced for that. And so our SELPA is recommending that we budget at $650.31 for ADA. That is up from $625 in 2021. The ACES program is one of those grants that never receives a cost of living adjustment. So that's assumed at 0%. And the SB 740 facilities grant would have would be under the 1.7% COLA. And it's oversubscribed. It continues to be oversubscribed throughout the state. So we have budgeted that at, it works out to about 71.25% of the rent costs for the schools. COA Elementary and EPIC would be the two schools that are eligible this year for the grant. We used to have the grant for GIS. That is ending because the GIS is moving out of the church property. So they're no longer eligible for the grant. And we no longer need the grant for GIS. Concentration grant. So all these items here are included in the May revise, but we are not including in our adopted budget because of their uncertainty, maybe complexity. There's a lot of policy decisions that need to happen. And so we decided not to include all of these items, and there's even another slide of a couple more. So the concentration grant, one of the proposals was to increase the concentration grant to 65% of our adjusted LCFF base grant from the 50%. The only kind of catch is that we would have to use that to increase the number of staff providing direct services to students. So that was a little bit controversial how that would work. And so we've not included that. There was a proposal for an after school and summer program and $1 billion to be given out to LEAs, and then growing to $5 billion in a few years for providing these programs. A behavior health initiative to treat behavior health needs. Broadband, there was some one-time funds of $35 million across the state to expand internet access. Universal transition kindergarten, that's a big one. We're not sure how that will continuously be funded in the long term, and how that would roll out, of course, across getting the program implemented and the long-term impact of that. So we've left that out for now. Community schools, educator workforce, which is considered teacher recruitment, retention, and PD. Some increased state reimbursement for meals. There was an additional, these two items here for student learning are kind of like a doubling down of the in-person instruction grant and the expanded learning opportunity grant, where they provide even more funding for that. EPIC's ACES grant. So EPIC just got awarded, I think a couple of weeks ago, an ACES grant, which is great news. We've been applying for years for that grant, and they finally got an award, and it's approximately $175,000, but it just happened just a couple of weeks ago. So we weren't able to really get it into the budget and figure out yet how we're going to utilize those funds, because we really put all of their ACES program in the expanded learning opportunity grant. So now we have to kind of come back together and figure out how we use not only expanded learning opportunity grant and the ACES grant, how that will work together. So P2 ADA is the most significant driver of our revenue for our schools. And this slide shows a comparison of that ADA and how It's changing from 2021 to 21-22. It is projected to decrease by almost 23 ADA across the GCC. So not large in percentage terms, but this is probably one of the first years that we are projecting a decline in enrollment and ADA, just because of a lot of families have decided to move out of the area. And so we're being conservative and reflecting that in our budget. General fund revenues. So this is a really odd, these are odd times. And so this probably just on its face looks really bad. And I'll explain why it is not that bad as it looks here. So if you look at 2021, it's showing $92.5 million of revenue. And then 21-22, about $68.8 million. So that's a decrease, a very large decrease of almost 23.7 million. And the reason for this is that we received just an unprecedented amount of one-time federal grants in 2021 school year. And so all of that revenue is being assumed to be placed in that year. And what we'll be able to use those funds throughout the next 3 years. So even though it's just because there's just a big one-time bubble of federal revenue in 2021 that causes it to look like it's a massive decrease. And that's why you see here the federal sources area, it's a $22.7 million decline. And that's just from all that ESSER funding. And it's a one-time, and we'll have that. We have a plan to use that over the next 3 years. The other state revenues, a similar situation as well. That's why that is declining 3 million. We have the one-time expanded learning opportunity grant. That was a pretty large grant. And so that's, the weird rules of accounting is you have to recognize the revenue for that grant in the year that it was awarded in, and then any unspent funds just go into the ending fund balance. So we're going to see a really big increase to the ending fund balance, into the restricted ending fund balance. And then and I have a later slide which will show how we are using that across the next year. Other slight changes here. LCFF is increasing 1.7 million. And despite the decrease to ADA, because of that large COLA, it still offsets that decline of ADA, and that's why we still see a $1.7 million increase there. And the other local revenues, they're going up a little bit, 333,000, and that's where our charter SELPA funds come through. And because of that increase, we're seeing an increase in the other local section. So I think it pretty much went over most of this here. Just that our federal grants, the other grants within the federal section are our title grants. We're not really assuming any change in funding in the Title 1, 2, and 3, and 4 grants. The IDEA grant, which is for special ed, that's still sitting at $125 per prior year enrollment. We do, 3 of our charters are getting the IDEA grant for the first time, CCCS, Futures, and HLA. So that's wonderful. That's more resources for special education. And because they are now in the second year, those were the last 3 schools to enter the SELPA, the El Dorado Charter SELPA, and they are now in their second year of the SELPA, and so they are eligible for these federal grants. Other state revenues kind of consist of the mandated cost block grant. That's up of 1.7% COLA. Lottery, we talked about unchanged. We talked about SB 740, ACES. The Strong Workforce Program grant, we're assuming about $95,000 for CCCS and almost 628,000 for SAVA SUSD in next year. CT incentive grant, SAVA SUSD gets about 126,000 is estimated. And one of the other wonderful things is CCCS applied for an early learning support block grant, and they received it as a 3-year grant. And so the portion of money for next year, we assume to be almost $160,000 for them. The in-person instruction grant, that is another one of these one-time grants that we are recognizing in 21-22, and we're getting $1.2 million to help for on-site instructional related costs. So we're going to be using that grant really just to fund, kind of save some of the unrestricted side of the budget by moving a lot of the teacher salaries and benefits that are on site into that grant. So this slide shows the general fund expenses. So we had our estimated actuals for 2021 closing out at a little over 64 million. And then for the 21-22 budget, a very big increase as we use all of these one-time grant funds to enhance for learning loss mitigation, technology, all of these needs. We are bumping that up to $76.7 million. And so that's a $12.6 million increase to our expenditures. And then these are this column here on the far right just shows the changes in each of the categories. Other outgo, just that represents loan payments. And so our loan payments are slightly decreasing. We paid off the revolving loan for Epic, their startup loan finally. It's been 5 years and it's been fully repaid. So that loan payment line is going down a little bit. Certificated salaries, really, our assumptions are mostly just based on adding positions and all the extra hours to address the learning loss. It's so much increase in summer school, extra time, extra hours after school, added positions to address the learning loss. And that's why we're seeing a big increase in our salaries. Classified is really the same thing, pretty much. We did increase the positions that were at the minimum wage level. We've increased it to stay in compliance with the minimum wage, and we've gotten even ahead a little bit of the minimum wage in our para positions. We've increased that a little bit more to help out. Benefits, because of all the salaries going up, that drives our benefits up. So, and we do have some increases to STRS and PERS rates. So STRS is increasing a little from 16.15 to 16.92% of salaries. PERS is going up from 20.7 to 22.91%. And on top of all the added salaries, that's why you're seeing this large, the increases to STRS and PERS at over 600,000 each. Health benefits, we assumed increases of 6%. So we really, built in a healthy kind of buffer for our health insurance to, in case that increases, that we can help pay for that, towards that increase for employees. The biggest really change that we don't normally see here is the SUI. That's the state unemployment insurance. You can see it's going up. It's projected to go up $662,594. That rate is increasing from 0.05% of salaries to 1.23% of salaries because of the state's unemployment fund has been drained for this past year. That's a 24.6x increase. So unprecedented increase to that fund. And then it is expected to drop. That's just a one-time increase. And then in the year after, it will drop to 0.2% over the long term. So that's one of the things that's kind of been shocking lately that we've, and we hope to see maybe some legislative action to help smooth out that rate. And then this other column here, that was the technology stipend that we were giving out to employees for working at home, and that stipend is ended. So that's why we see a drop in the other bucket here of 101,000. Books and supplies are increasing $2.2 million, and that is due to just a huge, a very large increase in curriculum and technology purchases through our supplemental and concentration grants and our one-time federal and state funds. The services and other section, we are expecting an increase of over almost 3.8 million. And again, that's largely reflecting some of the things as we come back onto campus. We now are expecting higher utility costs, higher services and other operating costs, field trips, they come back, that's going to be an increase. Bus service, that goes into the professional services line. And then we're just adding more into our licensing software. We're taking advantage of these ESSER funds and pandemic grants to really increase our software for tracking student data and learning and instruction, and using that more and investing into that. Travel and conference also too. I mean, we expect the world reopens again, that we'll be back out and attending conferences, and so we've added $198,000 there. Capital outlay expenses budgeted decreased about $838,000. So we finished up the modular project at Rancho del Paso. So now that was done in 2021, and now we're looking forward to making the tenant improvements for the Saba SUSD expansion on Power Inn Road. And so we've added $1.5 million for that budget. And Futures High, the second floor entryway improvements will be roughly probably 250,000. And then we budgeted some extra funds in COA to make, in case they have some more improvements. The shade structure, we're working on that project, and there's an electronic sign that we're working on as well, and then just for other deferred maintenance. And so with that change, because we had a big year last year, and so it's declining we're expecting it to decline about $838,000. This is the fund balance. So this column over here on the left is the beginning fund balance for each of the schools, a little over 56.5 million. And this budget is projecting a decrease to the fund balance of 7.862 million, and that will drop us down to about 48.7 million. And so this deficit is planned for next year as we spend down these federal and state grants for learning loss mitigation and pandemic relief. This slide just shows the building fund. So the modernization project, the state has been, slow to give us the funding for the modernization grant, even though the modernization project's pretty much done. So finally, the state has approved the sale of the bonds in the statewide bond program, and we should be expecting now funds to come in 21-22, about 6.3 million, and that will go right back out to San Juan Unified to reimburse them the costs of modernizing the facility. So this slide here, I just wanted to show everyone all of these special one-time pandemic relief grants and how we're spending them down. and how they're moving through the years. So over here on the far left is these are all the different programs. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 here. So each charter gets almost all of these grants, and so that's 9 times over. So you think about that, and that's just a lot of different grants, really. If you multiply that over 9, so that's probably about 72 new programs that we're having to manage here. And these are the expiration dates of the different funding sources. So they all have kind of different dates that we have to keep on top of and monitor. So our beginning balance, as we go into the next school year on July 1, we estimate that our beginning balance from all of these grants will be $20.8 million. And we are planning to spend down $9.1 million of that over the next year. So, and then that will end up being about 11.6 million. So we're spending it about half of it down next year, and that then we'll have ESSER, pretty much a lot of this ESSER 2, ESSER 3 funding to use for the next 2 years. So we're trying to strategically spend that down. Some of the risks that we're looking at over the next few years, unfortunately, the loss of enrollment as we may perhaps lose ADA to homeschooling or migration out of the area. So that's one of the things that's probably hitting more our classroom-based charters. I think Saba has still fared well through this and has still been attracting students. That's good news, but unfortunately it is hitting our classroom-based charters. And over the next few years, we still have the STRS and PERS still increasing. We still haven't hit the ceiling on that yet. And then we have our level of, with all the new one-time federal and state pandemic COVID-related grants, we cannot sustain the level of staffing, supplies, equipment, and services with that one-time funding that at some point is going to end. And so we have to be very careful that we're not, putting a lot of permanent positions into this where we just can't afford that long-term. So just to conclude, yes, with the significant amounts of one-time funds, we are strategically using those funds to not create lasting permanent expenditures. And just wanted to give a shout out to our budget analysts, Yvonne Grazier and Sharon Lockham-Sand. They did a lot of work in helping get this budget done on time. So that's all. Is there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Turner. Jack?
Well, as always, I appreciate the presentation, very insightful and just very, very well done. Maybe some observations and you can add to it. And I think all the years I've served on the board, I've not seen a decline in enrollment estimated for a COA. So there is real concern that the mobility of families out of the area will cause a decline there. And that's certainly something very unusual. And then next year, I can assume that the budget at this time next year will probably be well under 70 million without the one-time money coming in and so forth, or will that continue with the carryover that you showed us with the one-time money? Will it still be over 70 million? Because that was quite an increase from last year, up to $76 million. And then finally, in looking at the ADA projections, we're looking at now, will that be permanent at, like in some of the high school and so forth, $13,000 per ADA for a student?
Yes. So Yes, the 13,000, that is the LCFF with the increase to COLA. And so that is supposed to be a somewhat, we want to call, I guess, a permanent, in a way, level of funding.
It's a real incentive to grow. That is just looking at that amount of support for ADA. But anyway, thank you very much. A very, very informative presentation.
And can I just make an observation in response, Mr. Turner, that I think the entire state is seeing a student decline. Certainly across the state, one of the significant areas each district saw decline was in kindergarten this last year. And so now what we're seeing is we're looking to see our families who didn't enroll their child in kindergarten because they didn't want their first experience to be an online experience. Will they be coming back? And have we just not seen those numbers yet? So we're looking to those things. And as was observed, we do have some families who are, we think, still debating as they watch the outcomes of the pandemic and the state opening. Do I want my child back face to face? Do I feel safe? Do I want a homeschool environment? If I do, where do I want to, which option for homeschool do I want to do? We're seeing that, and we are seeing the California flight in some of our families as well. People moving to states with maybe different opinions about vaccinations, or maybe even just for cost of living issues. So there's quite a bit of churn, and it's not just with us, it's with all the districts across the state. And I really want to affirm Aaron because he is doing a good job, I believe, as he always has, coming in with somewhat conservative numbers to ensure we don't overinflate this budget and then not be able to live in our means.
Yes, thank you. It was just an observation that I had. It's usually been a growth area for us, and I understand in reading the literature of what's happening in the state, there is a lot of mobility. And once again, I don't think we will quickly go back to the traditional educational model that we're used to. So thank you.
Any other, Bruce, did I see? Yes, Bruce.
Yeah, I also would like to thank both our superintendent and business executive for really maintaining GCC in great fiscal shape. It's been a very uncertain year. Fortunately, we've gotten a lot of money in one-time grants that has kind of helped that. I had a question relative to what the state's going to do in terms of ADA this year with regard to if there are students that are choosing distance learning types of things, how are those going to be measured in terms of ADA?
So if I could speak to that, that's probably a part of the budget trailer language that is still being debated behind closed doors and is not leaking out. Unfortunately, usually we get some good information leaking out. But going into the budget agreement, there was a big section in the proposed budget trailer language about new constraints being put on what anyone could do in the independent study environment in terms of how we would document ADA and all the different things you would have to do. They were very much making it punitive to try to do independent study. And I am hearing that behind the scenes, there are a lot of districts, counties, and others who are saying, look, it's almost July. You can't change the rules for independent study on everyone. But there, as I understand it, there isn't a proposal to say a bifurcated amount, that you get this amount if you're classroom based in the district world and this amount if you're non-classroom based, nor is there a proposal like that related to charter schools. And we're hearing nothing about any kind of caps on charter independent study beyond what already exists in charter school law, which is if you are non-classroom based, of course, you can fully do independent study. And if you are a classroom based charter, you have to stay under a certain percentage to remain a classroom-based charter. Districts have some regulations about how many students they can put in independent study. And that was part of the proposal to see if they could be a little more lenient with districts about that so that they could keep their families. All that's still churning a bit, Mr. Mandrick.
Is there any hold harmless in effect for this next year, or is it entirely?
I'm
Back
not
to normal.
hearing anything about hold harmlesses anymore. I mean, obviously districts get home harmless for a year. Districts have always gotten a hold harmless for a year. But nothing for charters this year. Yeah, so.
Okay.
Excellent job.
Mr. Block?
Yes, I want to say it was an excellent job, and I thank Jack because he had the same question I had on the ADA, sort of. And the other thing was, with the price of all this stuff going up, the equipment, the education equipment, and everything else, how are we going to manage that? Because we don't know. There's a big inflation right now. I think some stuff is going up 30-40%. Are we going to be able to maintain that?
Yeah, that's definitely a risk. I probably should have added to the risk slide. We did factor in a consumer price index into our budget of over 3%. I think it was about 3.8%. Yeah, 3.84%. So we did jack that up a little bit, and we're hopeful that stabilizes, and so I think we're prepared for it.
Yeah, because the new tax goes in effect on July the 1st, right, on gasoline. So the price of transportation. So that's all.
We will have to entertain a motion, and we'll do that, and then I will make comments, acclamations, and all of that. So at this, yes, Mr. Mandrick.
No, I was just going to move approval of the budget for adoption.
Move approval for the budget
Second.
adoption.
Second.
Mr. Turner, second. It has been moved in second, and now I will do roll call. Harry Block,
Yes.
Bruce Mandrick,
Yes.
Jack Turner,
Yes.
Lily Campbell, yes. So the budget has been approved, the 2021-22 budget for the year coming. And on behalf of the board, again, you've heard them make comments, each of the board members. But again, we thank you, Aaron, and your staff for the amount of work that you do and for keeping abreast of this budget and keeping us abreast of what's going on. We really thank you, and Superintendent, we feel very blessed that we have the kind of budget and the information that we have for us to make the decisions that we do. So thank you, thank you. And with that, we will move to curriculum and academics. Adoption, local control, accountability plan.
This is Dr. McCormick's
Yes.
item, and I didn't get a chance to really say what I needed to say last night, but the presentation that Dr. McCormick provided last night was very thorough. A phenomenal job done this year, and a lot of that detail management and the herding of cats, which is working with our sites, was done by Dr. McCormick. So I definitely want to give her an affirmation. She did a great job.
Thank you. Dr. McCormick, is there anything else that you need to say that before we take the vote?
There is not.
All right. So you heard the information given to us last night by Dr. McCormick, and now we're going to take a vote for the adoption of the local control accountability plan. Mr. Turner,
I move approval.
move approval. May I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Block. Any other discussion, comments, or questions? Hearing none, seeing none, roll call. Harry Block,
Yes.
Bruce Mandrick,
Yes.
Jack Turner,
Yes.
Lily Campbell, yes. And so the local control accountability plan has been adopted. And we thank you again, Dr. McCormick, and all of the staff members, because this was a labor of love. It was hard work. As I continued to read and read, I kept thinking, how in the world can you get all of this done? But you got it done. And we thank you for it. And we thank staff, all of the principals and staff. So please make sure that those affirmations are given, Mr. Marco, to the staff for the hard work, both budgetary and also the accountability plan. And so with that, we will ask for any other comments or anything from anyone, from staff, from cabinet. Doctor? Yes, Mr. Turner.
I very likely will be out of town on July 13th. Are we planning to have the meeting, a board meeting on the 13th, or is that still up in the air?
I think that's a very good question. I'm gonna ask Cabinet at this time, do you see in the very near future anything that's going to be time pressing in relation to a July 13th board meeting? We had kept this one in case some of these matters, trailed longer, but Dr. McCormick, do you know of anything that must happen on July 13?
I do not.
Mr. Thornsberry?
The only thing maybe up to discretion is the purchases, large dollar purchases for the next school year. Do they need to be approved before they?
Yeah, we don't have any principals on during that time. The principals don't come on until the 19th. So I think the number of things will be limited. And I am going to assume that the board will give me the discretion necessary if something is time sensitive to act on it and then bring it to the board.
Yes.
Because as the board is aware, staff is not on July 13th. So we would have to ask people to come back off calendar to make that work. We held it. We do have a few business services people working, but the rest of the office is not working on that day. So I think it's at this point, I would like to make the call that we are going to not have a July 13th board meeting. So if we could make that a part of our notes, then we will take care of all the business that stacks up by the next July meeting, which there will be some. We will have some salary schedule revisions. I know a couple job descriptions I know are in the mix, but I don't believe any of these are time sensitive enough that they could be handled without staff being present and on calendar.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So you have our consent to do whatever is necessary.
Thank
The
you.
good of the organization to keep business going. And thanks to everyone for being here at the special board meeting. And we ask that you be safe and continue to take care of yourselves and have a restful couple of days. Is there
Ms.
anything?
Little.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna tell you, yeah, they gotta be safe. I just had a murder right in front of my house this morning about 4 o'clock.
Oh
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, some guy killed somebody.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody killed. They don't know who did it, but they was in the car together, seemed like it.
Mm.
And I've been up, so I've been up with the police all morning.
Well,
I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Harry.
yes. Please
Yeah, but
be safe
the
out
thing
there.
about it is it's right at the school. That's the cold thing. It's right at
That
Del
is
Paso
true,
Elementary.
right next door to your house. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today and last night. We've had 2 good meetings and we appreciate all of your time and energy that you give to GCC, the organization. So with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Okay,
Second,
we have a second, a motion. and a
yes, second.
And a second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So there we
Happy
have
4th
it.
of